Welcome to the Fearfully and Wonderfully Me podcast, a podcast designed to help you increase your influence, develop your leadership, and maximize your results. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast episode. Energy comes from relationships. We're kind of just continuing a little mini series here that I've been doing the last couple of weeks on how we can get more energy to do the things that we love. How can we feel better? How can we create more positive energy in our lives? And this is a big one. Energy comes from relationships, or energy is drained away from relationships. Kevin Eikenberry said, "Look carefully at the closest associations in our life, for that is the direction you are heading." Now, there's no doubt the relationships and connections in your life can be positive or negative, but the type and the quality of relationships in your life are determined by your values, thoughts, and actions. And I know it's kind of a bit of a pill to swallow that you have to accept responsibility for your life, because it's much easier to blame external conditions instead of internal ones. But once you realize that your internal conditions are affecting your external circumstances, you must accept the responsibility for making improvements if you're not 100% satisfied with your life. And since you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to assume you aren't 100% satisfied. You are interested in your version of better, whatever that is. That's kind of a sign that you're ready for growth, and that's not a bad thing, right? But just taking that responsibility and being proactive, but realizing internal state is affecting external circumstances, external conditions. And the relationships are a critical, powerful part of that. So there are two ways that we can increase our energy relative to our relationships. Number one, develop our character, right? And there again, that comes to the personal growth and the growth process. We did a podcast, or I did a podcast a couple of months ago, the growth process. So if that interests you, go back and listen to that. That was released on September 13th, podcast episode 243. So go back and dig into that. And that's one way that you can increase your energy relative to your relationships. And then number two, intentionally develop high quality relationships and social connections, right? So, just as you have to say no to some opportunities in life to say yes to others, you have to be intentional about saying no to some relationships in order to say yes to the right ones, right? In other words, you have to say no to some relationships before you'll be in a position to develop the right relationships. When you're committed to growth, sometimes it means leaving people behind. I was teaching this principle just a couple of days ago to a group of young women. And to me, it's always interesting how when you teach principles like this, as long as the person is, of an old enough age to actually grasp the concept, they understand it immediately because it's a common sense principle, and principles are like gravity, right? They always apply. So when I teach this principle, I was speaking to a group of teenagers and they had absolutely no trouble comprehending this principle. And so it made for some really good discussion as I taught the principle, and then we had some dialogue around it. And even, at that age, even as a teenager, it's easy to realize that when you're committed to growth, you have to leave some people behind at some point. Now, it's much easier when it's someone else for us to say, "Oh, that person's not healthy for you," or "That's not a good relationship," or "That's a downright toxic relationship." It's much more difficult to do in your own life. But the principle is the same. The wrong relationships will always influence you in a negative way. And so I was teaching as I was teaching this the other day, one of the comments that the young ladies made, or one particular young lady made a comment. She said, "You know what? I'm looking." She really, as we were going through this principle, she wanted to sit down and get really intentional right there and then. And she made a list of the closest relationships in her life. And then she said, "This is a healthy relationship. This is a healthy relationship. This is not a healthy relationship." She said, "Because I don't like who I am. when I'm with this person. And that was one of the most profound pieces of wisdom and insight, is realizing that a lot of times relationships aren't toxic because the person is bad in and of themselves, but sometimes their habits or choices or behaviors influence us in a negative way. And we don't like ourselves when we spend more time in those habits and choices and influence that's not serving us best. It doesn't mean the person's bad necessarily. It just means you're going a different direction in life. And that's what we have to realize, is that sometimes we need to leave those people behind, not because we're better than them, but because we're going a different direction and they're going in a direction that doesn't serve us. And realizing that's growth, because it takes a certain amount of character to leave those people behind and just say, "You know what? I care about you, but I can't spend a lot of time with you because I'm not happy with who I'm becoming when I spend a lot of time with you." I think it's Sarah Jakes Roberts who says, "You should never start a relationship with someone you wouldn't want to become." Mm. Because the people around us, the close relationships in our life have that much influence over us, and they're impacting our energy in a huge way, right? A positive relationship gives us more energy, and a negative or toxic relationship is draining energy from us. Your character is determining the relationships that you value, and your commitment to intentionally adopt the right values will help nurture the right relationships. Because who you are is determining who you're spending your time with. As Jim Rohn says, you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So I would challenge you, who are the 5 most people in your life that you choose to spend the most time with? Not necessarily your coworkers, although certainly they can influence you, but you may not be choosing to spend discretionary time with them outside of work. So sit down and write down the 5 people that you spend the most time with, by choice, right? Who are you spending your weekends with or your evenings with? Because those people are influencing you the most. And then just ask yourself, how would you describe their lives? Are they positive? Are they committed to their personal growth? How do they spend their spare time? How do you feel when you're with them? Do you make better or worse choices relative to what you're eating or reading or watching? When we hang around people, we start to eat like them and dress like them and watch what they watch and read what they read, and that's either helping you become the best version of you or it's not. And there's no judgment here. There again, it's not that we're better than someone else, but as you go through your list of relationships, ask yourself, how is each of these people helping me get to the next level? How are they helping me grow? How is this relationship encouraging me? Or are they keeping you average? And then our relationships influence our energy either positively or negatively, and they're ultimately determining our level of success. One of the ways I see this, it's very easy to see this, is with my run group, for example. And we have someone who's fairly little bit newer to the group, and we were talking last week, and I was sharing, I was like, there are certainly people in the group who are faster, stronger, better runners than I am, but my running has improved just by, being around them. And when you're in a group like that, to some degree, the stronger runners in the group will pull along some of those who are maybe not quite as fast or not quite as strong, right? So when we surround ourselves with those who are stronger than we are, it helps us grow. And I can certainly see the effect and the impact on that in my running. But it also goes the other direction, right? We have to be careful that we're not impacting ourselves unintentionally or subconsciously by surrounding ourselves with those people who aren't, growing in some way. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't set aside time to mentor someone else, because that's not holding you back, right? But that you should be more intentional with those relationships, so that, if you are setting aside time to mentor someone else and help them grow, that you also have relationships in your life that are helping you grow, right? So being intentional with that. And it doesn't mean we should spend time with people we're trying to help. And there again, this isn't about judgment, but just evaluating the people and the relationships in our lives, and Do we want to continue spending that much time with them? Should we continue spending that much time with them? And there again, if those close relationships aren't helping you achieve your goals or supporting you in your journey, that relationship may not be where you want to spend the majority of your time. Maybe you just need to renegotiate the relationship. Maybe you need boundaries in the relationship. Maybe that relationship needs to change, or maybe it's one that you need to eliminate. There are certainly instances where we've seen that in life as well, right? And only you can make that decision. But the thing is that those people who are satisfied with average want you to be average because they don't want to feel challenged. And if you're growth oriented and some other close relationship in your life is not growth oriented, your desire to grow will confuse them. Like they won't understand because you're growth focused and they're not. You're going to some degree unintentionally grow apart from them anyway, because that other person either wants you to stay where they are. Relative to averages is relative for all of us, but average people want to keep us average. They don't want to feel challenged. They don't want to see you growing away from them. So they'd much rather you just stay right there with them. You maybe have heard the analogy of I don't know if this is true because I've never actually done it, but it would be fun to try. I've heard that if you put a bunch of crabs in like a 5-gallon bucket, one of the crabs might try to climb out, but the others will pull him back. And I don't know, there again, I've never actually done that with a bunch of crabs, but it would be interesting to see. Do they actually really pull the other crab back as he's trying to climb out? But it's a good analogy, a good visual for how sometimes the people in our lives see you trying to climb out of the figurative bucket and improve yourself or improve your situation, not because there's something wrong with you, but better is possible. And you want to maximize the results in your life. You want to maximize your potential, but sometimes those around us feel challenged or threatened by that, and so they want to pull you back. They want to challenge that and say, "Oh, you don't really want to grow away from us. You don't really want to grow apart, right?" So think about that. You should end any toxic relationships, right? People who are intentionally holding you back should not have as big of a place in your life. They shouldn't have as much of an influence. And that's a hard choice, but you have to be intentional about getting those people with negative energy out of your life. And I bet you've probably outgrown people in your life in the past before, right? And you realize that you can still care about people without spending a lot of time with them. You've probably heard of unfollowing someone on social media. A lot of social medias have a unfollow platform or unfollow button, right? You start following somebody and then you see things that they post and you're like, I really don't like that. That doesn't serve me. I don't want to see that. Don't like what they talk about. And so you can unfollow them, right? You can choose to eliminate that from your social media feed. Well, hey, you can unfollow people in real life too. Right? And it's kind of the same way. You can just choose to minimize or turn off the influence that they have, the impact that they have in your life by unfollowing them, spending less time with them. Maybe that's an upfront, honest conversation with them about why you're choosing to do that. Only you can decide that. Right? But maybe not. Maybe it's just something that you want to just take a few steps away from that person and let the growth your growth naturally pull you away, and that's okay too. Only you can decide that. And what are those relationships in your life that are negative energies? There are some people, maybe you've met them, maybe you have some in your life now, but I hope not. But there are some people who are just negative people and they make other people feel negative when they're around them. I don't want to be around those people, right? Those are just people who doesn't matter what's going on. They are just determined to be unhappy or miserable or negative. And those aren't the people that I want influencing me because that's an energy drain, right? I don't want to be around someone who's nothing is ever going right for them. It doesn't matter what is in the glass, it's always half empty. And, when you have that mindset and that particular perspective, it's really difficult to fit well with people who always have the looking for the glass half full approach. So, if that metaphor kind of helps you understand that. So, there again, all we're talking about in this last few podcasts and today's podcast is being intentional with the things that can help us have more energy, because it is so critical. We all we all want to feel good. We all want to have more energy. And we get stressed, or when we get in a toxic environment or a toxic relationship, or we're putting toxic things in our body every day, all day, it's hard to feel and perform and think and create at our best. And that is holding us back sometimes from maximizing on our potential in life and our success. Until next time.
Start increasing your influence and maximizing your potential with Ria's audiobooks. Available at audible.com, amazon.com, and iBooks. Please visit riastory.com to learn about Ria's books, resources, speaking, and training programs. Thanks for listening.